what's making this video possible. So this video is brought to you by the ATV World. Thank you, brother. Bombardier's DS650 is a beast, but it's a beast of its own character, boasting significant power but suffering a little bit of an identity crisis. Ultimately, it didn't survive the rebranding of Bombardier ATV to CanAm ATVs in 2007, but it did manage to earn some impressive Dakar victories in its relatively short 7-year lifespan. Bombardier was best known for its Ski-Doo snowmobiles that first hit the market way back in 1959, although peak marketing clearly came in the 1970s.
Get on, Ski-Doo, and go do it.
But Bombardier also had a couple of hits in ATVs, including the uniquely step-through design Trackster and of course the DS650, before restructuring the company and rebranding ATVs as CanAm. It's tough to know if the DS650 died in 2007 because of Bombardier's restructuring, or if it simply wasn't strong enough of a model to compete with the quickly expanding pure sport market of the time. But regardless, it certainly wouldn't have survived the quad apocalypse that was just around the corner. That's not to imply that the DS650 was a bad machine. It was actually fantastically powerful and supremely plush, and if anything it was slightly ahead of its time. But it did suffer from a couple of huge flaws. One was in marketing, and the other was an inexcusable design oversight. On the marketing side, the DS stands for Dune Sport, and when the DS650 was released, it was focused on the open dune riding of the western United States. It's a little understandable why Bombardier would market this quad as a one-trick pony. At the time of release, it was the most powerful production quad ever built, with its beefy 653cc Rotax engine, but it was also 50 inches wide in a pre-side-by-side era trail world. So it was probably considered too powerful and too big to be a trail machine. Mid-range power is fun power. This is fun. This is a fun quad. It is like, man, I wish they still made these. I think there's a lot of sport quads that kind of like help kill the market, if you will, because the market got oversaturated. But this thing could have found a niche. I think the marketing was off. I don't think this should have been marketed for the dunes solely. I don't think it should have just been a calling this a dune sport is wrong. This should have been a TS. It should have been a trail sport. This one-trick marketing focus is probably what led to the biggest design oversight, and that's the lack of a reverse gear. Probably fairly unnecessary in wide-open dunes, the lack of reverse is definitely something you're going to notice on the trail, especially with the 490-pound dry weight of the DS, which is easily over 500 pounds wet, but actually feels much heavier. And that big problem is probably what turned a lot of folks off to the DS650. At the time of its release, Honda's 400EX was making waves, and the DS650 was much bigger in terms of sheer mass. She's a big old heavy monster to pull. Running pretty good though. It's fun. It's plush. I mean, I could ride it for a long time, but I don't know if I want to.
How plush is she compared to a Raptor?
Oh man, it's not even close. It's like trying to compare a Raptor to a dang Sportsman. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of people want to compare these to the Raptor 700 because of the engine size, but there's no comparison. Like the Raptor 700 is a very big sport quad, but it still feels like a sport quad. This is a huge sport quad that gets into the realm of feeling like a 4x4, especially when you're trying to throw it around. It'll throw around better than a 4x4 because of the solid axle, for sure. But the front end definitely feels, you know, it reminds me a lot of the Renegade. It even looks kind of like the Renegade in the front end. But when you're trying to like push a Renegade as if it were a sport quad, which doesn't really work because the Renegade's so heavy, this is a little reminiscent of that, although a little bit lighter, a little bit more fun because it's still more sport oriented. That mass translates into far less agility and flickability for the average rider, especially for anyone less than 220 pounds. The DS certainly was never poised to be a motocross or an XC racer, and to Bombardier's credit, they never pretended it was. The success it found in the 3,000-mile Dakar race in the mid-2000s is no surprise, though. If I had to ride a solid axle quad for over 3,000 miles, the DS650 would absolutely be my #1 choice. Rotax's power is impressive in every one of the motors I've ever experienced, and the big 650 single is no exception. Our unit isn't exactly mint, it shows signs of being pretty high hours, and it's 20 years old, but still it's very solid running, which is a testament to the motor's reliability. We got a big old day out here. This is actually pretty cool. Build quality is impressive, especially by today's standards. It has some squeaks and aches that would be well served by a bushing and bearing makeover, but nothing out of the ordinary for a 20-year-old heavily used machine. It's fun, it's comfortable, but it'll make you work for it. Man, it'll make you work for it. Flickable, lightweight, very agile machines. This is none of those things. The long travel front suspension is what makes the DS650 so plush. It had a ridiculous amount of wheel travel for a pure sport machine. Both front and rear travel was nearly 12 inches, and the front end is heavy. Like really heavy. Nope. Which in a way helps keep it planted, but makes the steering effort pretty tough. It filled a niche that the market probably didn't know it needed. And that niche is in a quad that fits big guys. This is a big guy quad. What the DS650 is a big man's wet dream in a pure sport ATV. We have bigger guys ask us all the time about what type of quad they should consider, and if the DS650 was still on the market, this would be the choice. The spacious ergonomics and incredibly plush and wide seat are perfect for plus-size fellas, especially those simply wanting a fun and comfortable trail machine for all-day riding that's still sportier than a Renegade. What the DS650 is, it wasn't perfect. But it was a first attempt in sport ATVs from a company who specialized in snow, and it was a solid and respectable effort. As I moved into these wider, more open trails, which are much more common today than they were 20 years ago, the massive weight is far less of an issue, and the plushness and comfortable seat really start to stand out. Riding the DS650 is interesting because you can see and feel CanAm's DNA hinting at what would become the Renegade, a machine that, unlike the DS650, was fully intended to tear up the trails and dominate XC racing. I think that's what I like most about CanAm's ATVs in general, that you can feel their company's history. They give you the sense that they're ATVs designed by the same engineers that made snowmobiles, and that's what makes them unique. Guys, thank you for coming along with me on the ride on the DS650. Eric, ATV World, appreciate you letting me borrow the GoPro mount and making this video happen. Check out the ATV World. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments about the DS650. Should have left the market, should have come back. What do you think in general? Kind of a unique quad, especially on the East Coast. We don't see very many of them. So, yeah, until next time, Dirt Obsession.